the research that I developed in my doctoral thesis, which is based on the analysis of the public space that was developed in the two main urban forms that were developed in the deeper growth of the city between the 50s and the 60s of the last century, and that were the housing estates, that social developments that were based in the functional urbanisms, and the ordinary peripheries that were developments that took place as informal ones, not plain, in the work neighborhoods. So, as a global previous view, I look for the social massive estates that were developed in around Europe. You can see here one from your city, from Varna. That is the first one that you can. No, it's not. Yeah, it's the first one that you can see here. That is the Mladost housing estate. And that after I will ask you if you know something about that housing estate, because I'm really interested in
Mladost here, Varna.
Yeah. How the public space of that development function, if you know it or not. So we will see. This is one of the most known housing estates in Madrid, that is the Gran San Blas housing estate. In Madrid and Barcelona, housing estates are much bigger than in Saragosa, more closer to housing estates that were developed here in Bulgaria or the eastern countries of Europe. But in Saragosa, housing estates were very, very little. The scale was little in comparison with that biggest housing estates. And I found a big quantity of studies that pay attention to that kind of developments, but all of them study the housing estates are fragments apart from the tissue of the city. So my doctoral thesis proposed that that kind of developments, those housing estates, should be studied in comparison with the tissue of the city that was developed around them. To also pay attention to the connection between those kind of tissues. So this is the change of the look of the study from the housing estates to the comparison study between housing estates and ordinary peripheries. There were, of course, as in all the research, previous hypotheses, and my objective that was that comparative study, and to develop the methodology of comparing, and specific objectives that contribute with that objective, that my objective, and to reveal the hypothesis. It has moved because of the typography, but as you can see, there were a lot of studies based on housing estates from different approaches, the historiographical, the sociological, the architectural one, and I center on the urban morphology one because I study them from the public space perspective, from the urban sphere. So I started with some parameters, some like the scale, the distance with the city center, because they usually were built in the outskirts of the city, so the position with the city center was important in their development and in their integration in the current city. And I select then here the one that I took from Varna, the Mladost, that you could see that is in the third belt from the city, talking about the scale is one of the biggest of the song that I choose from the housing estates from Europe, and talking about the limit, the contact between the city and the housing estate, we can find that he was barely integrated with its developments that surround it. No? You can find many mix of uses in the perimetral area, which contributes to urbanity and mobility, and also that all the perimetral area is consolidated today. No? It has changed its position from the outskirts to the inside part of the city. There are all the housing estates that I choose from Europe, and many parameters that I study, and the relation between those parameters. And we move to the Saragosa case study. No? And it centered the research in 10 housing estates in the city of Saragosa, and of course the developments that took place around them. No? The ordinary periphery of the neighborhoods that were developed in the surroundings of that housing estates. So housing estates as unitary actions, functionalist urbanism based in and towards a slab in a continuous way. That was the urban forms that were used in that kind of developments. And the ordinary peripheries or the neighborhoods that were gradual processes, they were developed during a long time, and was more related to the traditional system of building the city with streets and urban blocks. All of them, these two kind of urban growth, are the protagonists of the first periphery of the inner city, the inner periphery of the city, in this case of the city of Saragosa, that were developed between that decades, between 50s and 70s. Here you have the plan of Saragosa. Maybe you recognize the areas that we have seen before, the Roman city, the first developments with the Arabic period, the Paseo de los Independientes, that acts that we can see here. We can recognize the third belt of the city and the fourth belt. So we can see that all the developments that were studied in the doctoral thesis were placed in those workers' neighborhoods that were developed between 50s and 70s. And you can see here the black dots are the housing estates that were selected for the study, and the yellow one are the fragments of the neighborhoods that were studied in comparison with the housing estates. This is the methodology, the different analyses that were developed during the research based in the urban morphology approach, and including analysis in the public space utilization of that urban growth. Here's the part that I ampliate in the study, the urban processes and the open space study with analysis of visibility, visual perception, the use of the space, and also the attention to the ground floor that took an important role in the urban vitality of the public spaces. The study is developed in several scales, from the city scale to the fragment scale, and taking into account also the role that fragments has in the neighborhood scale. There we have a comparison, the first analysis on the urban processes that shows how that developments, that housing estates, here we have two of them, the two that are placed in the Las Puentes neighborhood. They were built in the outskirts of the city and in the 50s and 70s decades. Nowadays, they have been involved in the development of the continuous city. No? It happens in all the cases in the same way. We have another housing estate here. If you can difference, they are the black or the most colored ones that are in the plan. Here we continue with the Las Fuentes cases studies, and we have two housing estates in that neighborhood. We can differentiate it from the slabs that are placed, no? That compose those planned developments, in comparison with the ordinary periphery that is developed with the traditional urban block, no? Closed urban block, and buildings developing in different plots. You have here a more detailed developed of that neighborhood, and that is the analysis that I did for all the neighborhood and the cases studies referring to urban processes. We have also photographs that we can compare the time where the housing estates were built in the orchards, between orchards in the outskirts of the city, and the development that took place around them, no? In all their surroundings. So we analyzed also all the parameters that we have seen from the European cases, paying attention to the scale, the relative position from the city center, and also paying attention to the limit of that kind of development. We also studied the system of streets with parametrical approaches, space syntax theory, that is an analysis that shows the integration of one street in all the system, and also the possibility that this street has to be chosen in a walk, no? In a pedestrian walk. So we studied these kind of parameters in the city scale and also in the neighborhood scale. No? You can see here the red streets are the more integrated ones, and in the case of choice analysis, the darkest are the more suitable to be chosen in a walk. We also studied that kind of parameters in a fragment scale, because we pay attention to that scale in analysis that consider a radius of 400 meters, because it's the distance that is usually made by walk. And when we speak about urbanity and quality of public space, the pedestrian scale is the most important. So we also repeat that kind of analysis in a pedestrian scale with the fragments. We also took attention to the urban blocks in terms of the size of the urban blocks, also in terms of the ratio of plots, and also in terms of occupancy, no? The surface that is occupied by building inside the plot. We have here the results of the density, the urban density, analyzed from different approaches, and the results that we want to show is like the massive housing estates that are those two in that case, in that neighborhood, are in most of the cases the fragments that has the lowest density. And it is like surprising, because that kind of developments were criticized in the period for being big density ones. So if we compare with the ordinary periphery, it changed our mind about that question. We have here a representation in 3D that want to show the typologies that were used in that kind of developments, that in the case of the housing estates were based in towers and slabs. We also pay attention to the use that took place in the buildings around that kind of fragments, and also in the ground floor that was placed in the fragment chosen by the research. We have differentiated if the facades are permeability or not permeability, how many access do we have, that kind of analysis that girls pay attention to demonstrate the habitability and the urbanity of a public street or a public space. We also analyzed the public space in terms of visibility, also with parametric technologies, and paying attention to the spaces that are more visible or not, because these kind of parameters are related with the perception of safety that we have in a space, or with the vitality of the public spaces. So again, in red we have the more integrated space that works visually, and in blue, in dark blue, we have the less integrated space. So we have that in the housing estates we have a lot of less integrated spaces than in the ordinary peripheries, because as they are based on the urban blocks and street system, the open spaces are less and more structured and more integrated in the open system, open space system. We dip into a closer scale to study the public space, and we pay attention to the use of that kind of spaces. Again, based on Gell's theory and Gell's approaches, we pay attention to the number of persons, of people that were in that spaces and which activities they were developing. No? If they are passing by, if they are standing, if they are sitting, because in that way we can see if a public space is working or not working. And if we compare again between the two housing estates where the public life is like nothing, with the ordinary periphery where activity and use appears of public life, there is a big difference between the two urban growth developments. Also, apart from the stationary activities, we also took place to the work and the activity that the streets has, counting the people that pass through many streets of that development around in a time of 10 minutes. And again, we can compare the numbers of the two housing estates with the numbers of the ordinary periphery, that has a more vibrant vitality and urbanity. Those are the forms that we did to take that kind of data. We have standing in the street, as Gell says in his book, and paying attention to the people that cross a line, an imaginary line that we have placed in the street, and also classifying who are crossing that line, what age, what gender, and paying attention to the differences. This is, as we have seen the results from the stationary activities, this is the methodology that we take. I took drone photographs of that spaces and then analyze. We can also do it viewing from the street, placing from a period of 5-10 minutes, and looking to the activity of the space, but we took those photographs to get a reflect of the position and activities of the people. Here in the housing estate, we have seen the results. Here we have remarked the position of the people that are just two people in the open space, and in opposite the ordinary periphery, we have a bar with a terrace in the street. We have many people placed in the terrace that are sitting. We have also kids that are playing. We have also benches. So the urban mobiliary is also very important in the spatial conception of the public space, and the well-designed mobiliary and position is crucial in that sense. So we can compare the vitality from the ordinary periphery with the known vitality of the housing estate. And also we have analyzed the spatial perception of that kind of spaces, paying attention to that kind of question. No? We have here writing the pedestrian space that is in yellow. No? We have compared the street system and the open system of the housing estate, the ground floor, if it is permeable or not permeable. In housing estates we have residents and dwellings in the ground floor, so most of times that kind of spaces are not, they have not change of permeability with the street, and in the ordinary periphery we have a lot of access, a lot of shops, a lot of restaurants that open their interiors to the street. So the permeability between the public space and the private space is much more than in the housing estates. We have also paid attention to the private vehicle presence that in many times in the housing estates have occupied the interblock space, not in that case, but in many others, and also to the vegetation, the presence of trees or of grass, and the maintenance of that spaces. And finally, we also pay attention to the limit, the perimetral situation of that housing estate, classifying that situation, that different situation, according to the terms that Jane Jacobs and Kevin Lind use in their books: the limit, the barriers, the borders, and also the sutures between the ordinary periphery and the housing estates. And here we can see a representation of the different situations that we can see in the housing estates of the neighborhood that we have seen till now. And they are based on the parameters that we have studied before: the permeability, the number of access, the connection between the position of the ordinary periphery and the slabs of the housing estate, the continuity of the street system, and all that kind of analyzed parameters. And finally, this is a resume of all those analyses that are taken for each of the cases. Here we have another different neighborhood that was analyzed with other two housing estates, and the analysis that took place from the city scale till the fragment scale, taking into account all that kind of parameters that we have seen. And also, if we put that analysis not classified with the neighborhoods that they are placing, but with the urban growth form that takes, we can see each of the parameter in comparison with all the case studies that the research pay attention to. And I think that this is all. Very quickly resume of the research, and if you have any questions, we can deep into any of the parameters.
I think our colleagues have no questions. So I would like to thank you very much, Isabel, for coming over and presenting us the history of Saragosa, which was very, very interesting. And hopefully we'll visit there. You know? As a students, we can go on Erasmus project and come to University of Saragosa and spend a semester there.
I invite you for sure to come to Saragosa. I think you will enjoy the city. We also have a nice university that is well connected with the city center.
Is it part in the old town or it's somewhere? No, it's outside.
Where the architecture studies are in the outskirts, but well integrated just in the come back to the
Do you have like a subway system or something underground?
We have tram line.
Tram lines, okay.
Just one. The second is controversial because has been many proposals, but they don't have success at all.
Yeah,
but the one that has been developed works pretty well, connects. It's just in the north-south axis, so the
cardio.
Yeah.
So you said also in Saragossa you have a very hot summers and cold winters.
Yeah, if you want to visit the city, choose autumn or spring because summer is really hot and winter is really cold.
How hot it is? Like 30 degrees?
No.
More, 40?
44, 45.
Really? Saragossa? 45 degrees, no? We don't get such a temperature here.
Lucky you. In August, if you see anybody in the street, he's a tourist.
Tourist, oh crazy.
In Saragossa, run in August out of the city. Of the vacation period is usually in August because it's...
Everybody goes there.
Yeah.
And do you have a siestas? Siesta still? Siesta?
The night?
Yeah. Is it still traditional?
It depends on the work timetable, the work schedule.
But for restaurants and cafes, they open all the time. It's not that they close during lunchtime.
No, not usually. Maybe 2 hours in the afternoon between the...
2 and 4 maybe. Yeah.
Between 4 till 7, 5 till 7. But the lunch schedule and the dinner schedule...
And they stay open till late, till midnight.
Yeah. It's completely different.
We'll go to Saragossa. Okay. Where is the university?
The university is right here. But the tram line
runs right through.
Goes across all that line. Connecting also the central part is really nice. And the big facilities that are the hospital, the football stadium, the university, the central university that is also here, that are the historical studies, mathematics, physics, medicine, economics, are in the old campus of the city, which is center here, near to the football stadium. And we have a third campus, university campus, which is placed also in the outskirts, which is for veterinary studies. They need bigger spaces and open spaces because they work with animals, so they are in the outskirts. And the polytechnical, which is architecture and engineer, is in the north part, which is here. We have also, I don't enter in the modern development of the city, but here the exposition of 2008 were developed in the river banks of the city, and it took place in this meander of the city. And nowadays it's going to gain urban vitality because the buildings are reoccupied with other functions, The open space has worked very well from the beginning of the expo, because the change of the riverbanks were a surprise for the city. The city starts to look into the river, because the river has been like a border, and nobody has paid attention to the riverbanks. And nowadays we have you can walk all along the river, and there are many parks that are connected, and many open space and green space that is very, very well designed and very well conserved. It also takes into account the river natural changes. There are areas that can be flooded, and they support the floods and the different changes of the river. And the big part of the expo is just into the meander. But this area is a good place to take a walk, spend a sunny morning, and many families go to there every weekend. And in the modern place, the train station, that is not such a successful building in terms of functionality, but it connects very well with Barcelona and Madrid. You can go from Barcelona or from Madrid into an hour and a half into train, so it's very comfortable to move between cities with the train. And there is also an airport with not many flights. It is a transport airport, very important, the second in Spain. But in terms of personnel and
it's for cargo, not for so much passengers.
Yeah. We have not much flights. With Bucharest, there are direct flights, so it's a possibility, but probably